Hello students, welcome to my next lecture. Today we are going to learn about industrial marketing research. I, Dr. Rohan Prabhakar Devale, welcome you all. Learning objectives for today's session. The basic objective for learning this session is to understand the concepts of marketing research, specifically industrial marketing research. Also appreciate the marketing research process. We will learn to familiarize with different types of data collection methods. We will start with the introduction. In order to implement the marketing concept, marketers require information about the characteristics, needs, wants, and desires of their target market. What is definition of marketing research? Marketing research is the process of defining the marketing problem along with various opportunities in the market. It is dealing with the systematic collecting and information analyzing, also recommending actions to increase an organizational marketing activities. It is the function that links the consumer or customer and the public to the marketer through the information. Need to approach the research design in a logical manner. Difference between good and bad research can depend on the quality of various inputs for that particular research. So you must keep in mind that the marketing research must be conducted in a systematic manner. Systematic manner means there are few steps and involves a series of various steps and processes that should be followed one after another. Also, data may be available from different sources. So you cannot rely on one type of data. You can rely on various sources, different sources of reliable data sources. Research implies to any aspect of marketing that needs information. Also, understand that finding must be communicated to the appropriate decision maker. Now we will start with the marketing research process. So typically there are 5 steps in marketing research process. It is overall approach, not a rigid set of rules. So these 5 steps are defining and locating the problem, collect relevant information, then research designing, def- designing the research design, then data collection and finding and conclusion. We will start with one by one. First, we will start with defining and locating the problem. Usually, a departure from some normal functions, i.e., conflicts between the failures in attaining the various objectives. So, goals may be unrealistic. So, there is need to probe beneath the superficial symptoms. Research objective specifies that the information is needed to solve the problem. Marketing plan 2 determines the unfulfillment needs or wants within a specific target market or various targets markets that may be university students or local residents. May need to use exploratory research here because before conclusive research you have to explore something. Therefore, query needs news group with your ideas to better define your research needs. Perhaps refine your ideas before developing your hypothesis. Now, what is hypothesis? That we will come within few minutes. So, first you have to think about the research problem. There are various emerging trends in business research that also you need to understand. Before starting the research process, you should do a small work that includes You have to identify various questions in research. That questions can be formulation of research problem. Formulation of research problem is the very basic and first step in conducting any research. And formulation of research problem deals with understanding the management question, conversion of management question into research question, and then you have to convert research question into investigation question. We can take one example. Suppose any particular company's sales are declined, that is management dilemma. Now, what is management dilemma? Why the company's sales are declined? That is management dilemma. Now, how to convert this management dilemma into management question? So, management question is how to increase the sale? Because management dilemma is the sales are declined and why the sales are declined. The management question will be a remedy for that declination. So, how to increase the sale is the management question. Now, management question is how to increase the sale, and we are going to convert this management question into research question like should we introduce new products so that we can increase the sale, or should we introduce incentive for salesmen so that the sales will be boost, or should we advertise more so that the sales should be increased, or should we hire a new marketing team to boost the sale, or should we explore new markets to boost the sale? So there can be n number of questions. These questions are called as research questions. We will take one more example. Suppose in a particular organization, the management dilemma is there are defective products as outputs. So management dilemma will be what is the reason behind increasing the defective outputs? Management question will be naturally how to decrease the defective outputs, and research questions will be should we purchase new machines, or should we service the existing equipments, or should we train our employees, or should we apply the Japanese mistake proofing techniques like Pokayoke? So basically defining and locating problem that we have seen that can be done through understanding the management dilemma, management questions, and converting management questions into research questions. So management question asks what management to do to eliminate the problem. Research question then determines what is possible to change the management part to correct the problem. Further, the investigation questions determine the specific alternative option managers could take to solve the problem. So basically, what is research problem? So research problem is a definite, clear expression or a statement about an area of concern, a condition to be improved upon, a difficulty to be eliminated, or troubling question that exists in scholarly literature or theory that points out to need for meaningful understanding and deliberate investigation. So research problem does not state how to do something over a vague or broad proposition or present a value question. So formulation of research problem, you should specify the research objective, then review the context of the research problem, then explore the nature of the problem, then define the variable relationships and the consequences of the alternative courses of action. So this is how you can do the first step. Then next step is accessing the decision factors. Now different set of variables, alternatives and uncertainties that combine to give the outcome of a decision. Now there can be alternatives like decision maker has the control, and there can be some uncertainties like uncontrollable factors also can be there in this study. Next is decision maker must do what. So Determine the principal alternatives that can be considered as reasonable approaches to solving the problem, that is, reasonable outcomes for the research. So, the major uncertainties that can affect a particular alternative and result in being a good or poor solution to a particular problem. Next part is how to collect the relevant information. So, that is the part of data collection. But before that, we should know what is hypothesis. So, developing hypothesis, that is drawn from previous research and expected findings, specifically expected research findings, and information or guess assumption about a certain problem or phenomenon happening to be logically proved or a set of various circumstances. Thus, a proposition is to be tested if formally referred as the hypothesis statement. A market research may have more than one hypothesis statement, and it is not mandatory that it get limited only by one. As information is gathered by researcher, you can test various hypothesis statements. Now, hypothesis can be alternative hypothesis, it can be null hypothesis, it can be working hypothesis. So there are n number of types in any hypothesis statements. Now, before proposing the hypothesis statements, you should have the dependent and independent variables for your study. So variables can be divided into uh, basically two parts: dependent and independent variable. Suppose we will just take one example. If you want to conduct a study between the level of salesman output and closeness of worker supervision. So this study is about if you are going to do supervision to the salesman, a very close supervision, then whether the output of the salesman will increase or not. So basically we want to find out whether there is any association or any linkage between closeness of worker supervision with the output of the salesman. So here the dependent variable will be level of salesman output, and independent variable will be closeness of the supervision. Closeness of supervision will be independent variable. So how we are going to propose the null hypothesis here? There is no significant association between level of salesman output and closeness of salesman supervision. So here we want to say in the null hypothesis that there is no relationship between the dependent and independent variable. And alternative hypothesis will be just opposite to null hypothesis, that there is a relationship between dependent and independent variable. So in the same case or same example, we can take the example like there is a significant association between level of salesman output and closeness of salesman supervision. So in this way, we can propose null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. There can be working hypothesis also. So a null hypothesis states that a population parameter is equal to a value. Null hypothesis is often an initial claim that researchers specify using the previous research or previous knowledge. Alternative hypothesis states that the population parameter is different than the value of the population parameter in the null hypothesis. So the alternative hypothesis is what you might believe to be true or hope to prove true. Next part is data collection. So before that, we should understand that collecting the data, there are two types of data, basically the secondary data and primary data, inside or outside of the organization. So we will start with secondary data collection. So secondary data collection, that is internal database or MIS of any organization, then accounting data for that organization, sales data of that organization, then government data that is available on various websites, data or information available in various magazines, then a survey of buying power of the customers, then syndicated data services, then various marketing research companies that are conducting some research. So all these are the types of secondary data. So we will start with the secondary data. So uh, again, I will tell you the same thing, that there are two methods of data collection: secondary data and primary data. Meaning for secondary data is data that is or that was already collected by someone other than the researcher or user. So the common sources of secondary data are census, organization records, various reference books, data available on various official websites of the company or government data, government officials websites, information collected by government department or various um, referred journals or periodicals, or data that was originally collected for the purpose of research. So these are various common sources of secondary data. Secondary data analysis can save time and would otherwise be spent of collecting data, and particularly in the case of quantitative data, can provide larger and higher quality database and would be unfeasible for any individual researcher to collect on their own. In addition, analysts of the social and economical change consider the secondary data as very essential, since it is impossible to conduct a new survey that can adequately capture the past change or the developments. However, secondary data analysis can be used or very useful in marketing research, as data may be outdated or incorrect. So we can say the characteristics of secondary data as it is summary of a book or a set of records. The collection of secondary data is less time consuming. The data cannot be personally checked or verified. It provides a larger database of information. In some cases, secondary data may not be reliable. So you have to take care of this while selecting the source of secondary data. So what are various pros or advantages of secondary data? Secondary data is available from the other sources and may already have been used in previous research, so making it easier to carry for the further research. So previously primary data and conclusion can be used as secondary data in the next or forthcoming research. Again, secondary data is time consuming. Sorry, extremely sorry. The secondary data is time saving and very efficient. The data was collected by someone other than the researcher. So as the data is already collected, so new researchers' time is saved in collecting the data. Administrative data and census data may cover both larger and much smaller samples of the population in details. A clear benefit of using secondary data is that much of the background work needed has already been carried out, such as literature reviews and case studies. Here, the data may have been used in published text and statistics elsewhere, and the data could already be promoted in the media and bring in useful personal contacts. Secondary data usually have a pre-established degree of validity or reliability, which not need to re-examine by the researcher who is reusing such data. So there is no need for doing the reliability and validity test again. Again, secondary data is the key concept of data enrichment, which is where a database from the secondary sources are connected to a research database to improve its precision by adding key attributes and values. Secondary data can provide a baseline for primary research to compare and collected primary data results, and it can be useful in developing a research design. So in the next part, we will learn about research design. We'll just have brief disadvantages of secondary data. The data may be outdated or incorrect or inaccurate for the current study of the researcher. If the data collected from different research purposes, it may not cover those samples of population researchers wants to examine, or maybe the data can be insufficient. Also, administrative data which is not originally collected for research may not be available in the usual research formats or may be difficult to get access to. Primary data. Now we will talk about primary data. Primary data is the data originated for the first time by the researcher through direct efforts and experience for the purpose of some specific investigation. Primary data is the data that is collected by researcher by conducting a research by himself or herself or the first-hand sources using various methods like surveys, interviews, experiments, and so on. It is collected with the research project in mind directly from various primary sources. Primary data is the data that is collected from a source by researcher himself or herself in a raw form. The data is derived from a new or original research study and collected at the source itself. The common sources of the primary data are various surveys, observations, experiments, questionnaire that can be structured or unstructured, and researcher can conduct personal interviews for collecting the primary data. As far as the characteristics of primary data are concerned, primary means first, original, or direct. So, primary data are created by witness or records who experience the events. Primary data are actual records from the past in the original form without any interpretation. Primary sources need to be interpreted, then they document events, then people and viewpoints of that time. These are the characteristics of primary data. What are various advantages of primary data? The primary data are original and relevant to the topic of the research study, so that the degree of accuracy is very high. Primary data is that it can be collected from a number of ways like interviews, telephone surveys, focus group, etc. It can be also collected across the national borders through various emails and posts. It can include a large population and wide geographical coverage. Moreover, primary data is current and it can better give a of the researcher, realistic view to the researcher about the topic under consideration. Reliability of primary data is very high because these are collected by the concerned and reliable party. Now, as there are various advantages, the primary data is also having some disadvantages. First is the collection of primary data where interview is to be conducted. The coverage is limited. For the wider coverage, a more number of researchers are required. A lot of effort and time are required to collect the primary data. By the time data collected, analyzed, and report is ready, the research problem may become very serious, or maybe it can become outdated. So the purpose of research may be defeated. Also, it may have some design problems like how to design a survey. Then question must be simple to understand and respond, and so on. Some respondents do not give timely responses. Sometimes the respondents may give fake or socially acceptable and sweet answers and try to cover up the realities. So that are various disadvantages or cons of the primary data. Now we will start with the concept of research design. So basically, what is research design? It can be conducted into three types research design, namely exploratory research design, descriptive research design, and causal research design. As far as industrial marketing are concerned, apart from that, there are other research design types also. In order to trace the positivism in the phenomenon, one resort to the exploratory research design. Descriptive design intend to refer to the description of a phenomenon with no inclination or finding the cause and effect relationship. And causal research design tests the hypothesis in terms of cause and effect, and finally helps in developing models to solve the marketing problems. So the framework or plan for a study that guides the collection and analysis of data that may include who collects the data, then what should be collected, also who or what should be studied, then how much will the study cost, how will be the data collected, and how long the data collection is to be. So this is about the research design. So the concept of research design is like that. Research design is defined or can be defined as a framework of methods and techniques chosen by the researcher to combine various components of research. It is reasonably a logical manner so that the research problem is efficiently handled. Research design provides insight about how to conduct the research using a particular research methodology. Every researcher has a list of research questions which need to be assessed. This can be done with research design. The research design refers to the overall strategy that researchers choose to incorporate the different components of the study in a consistent and logical way, thereby ensuring researchers will effectively address the research problem. One can say that research design constitutes the blueprint of the collection, measurement, and analysis of data. Also, research design is the framework that has been created to find the answers to the research questions. Research design is a set of methods and procedures used in collecting, analyzing measures of the variables specified in the research problem research study. Again, a particular research design should have include the various things like what is the study type, whether it is a descriptive, correlational, experimental, exploratory study, and so on. Also, if it is descriptive, then whether it is a case study or longitudinal study, so subtype of study. Also, it should have a well-defined research problem, followed by depending and independent variables, followed by the hypothesis statement that can be working hypothesis, null hypothesis, or alternative hypothesis. It should have the plan for data collection, that is primary, secondary, or a blend of primary, secondary, and it should have a statistical analysis plan along with the sampling technique. So we are coming to the part which is called as sampling. So before that, we'll just have one good design research design definition. So according to Keringler, research design is a plan, structure, and the strategy of investigation to obtain answers to the research questions. So this is about research design. Now we will move towards the next part, that is called as sampling. Now what is sampling? To select representative unit from a total population, this method is called as sampling method. Okay, so sampling procedures are used in studying the likelihood of events based on assumption about the future. Sampling intend to study the issues of problem, not taking data from every element of the population, but by estimating with certain statistical reliability. Therefore, instead of taking data from the population, a group representing the characteristics of the population is considered. This group is referred as sample, and when drawn with unbiased representation of characteristics, it is referred as random sample. Now, suppose a researcher wants to conduct a study of B2B satisfaction level of a salesman. So, how the salesman is performing. Let there are 100 salesmen working in a particular organization. Particularly if researcher conducts a survey which includes the response from all the 100 employees, sorry, 100 salesmen, then particularly it will be very time consuming. It may be costly and complex also. So the salesman performance in B2B, or the salesman satisfaction in the B2B, researcher can have uh, researcher can conduct a limited number of salesmen for that particular company. So if researcher conducts a survey that includes all the 100 employees or salesmen, then it is said to be the universe of the study. And if out of those 100, if the researcher selects a sample, that is, let's say, 60 salesmen, then all the 60 selected salesmen can be termed as sample for the study, and 60 will be sample size. And the way researcher can select 60 salesmen from the 100 total 100 employees, this method of selection of the sample is called as sampling method. Now, random sampling refers to having equal chance of each member of the population being considered in a sample. This is called as probabilistic method of sampling. There are many other methods in probabilistic sampling, such as systematic random sampling or stratified random sampling, area sampling, etc. So there exist non-probabilistic sampling methods also, where the sample is chosen with some biasness, maybe with some biasness in the framing the group to be considered for data collection. The non-probability sampling could be of many types. Sometimes they are called as judgmental sampling, convenient sampling, snowball sampling, quota sampling, and so on. The individual or heads consisting the sample is referred to as sample elements. So, how a person can conduct industrial marketing research? He can go for the survey method or focus group, or he may also go for questionnaire construction. So one by one we will see. First is survey method. So mail wide area, limited funds need incentives to return the questionnaire mail panel, or consumer purchase diaries must include a cover letter to explain the survey's new groups or e-surveys. So we can take examples like telephone speed, immediate reaction is negative, WATS computer assisted telephone interview, and so on. Personal interviews, flexibility, information or increased information, non-response can be explored. Most favored method among all those surveys that can be conducted in shopping malls. So it is this method is called as survey method. So in home or door-to-door interviews, get information, but it is costly and getting harder to accomplish. Mall interviews or more mall intercept interviews, percentage of people passing through a certain point to the mall. Maybe we can conduct a survey method there. Almost half of the major consumer goods and services organizations use this technique as a major expenditure. They can use a demonstration, gauge visual reactions. So regarding social behavior, mall survey get more honest response than the telephone surveys. That is again found through research. So there is a bias towards those that spend a lot of money or time in mall. Need to wait for this on-site computer interview. Respondents complete self-administrated questionnaire conducted in shopping mall. Questions can be adaptive depending on the responses. Next is focus group or observe group interaction with the members are exposed to an particular idea or concept. It may be less structured or informal discussion among the members. Consumer attitudes, behaviors, lifestyle needs, and desires can be explored in a flexible and creative manner. Questions are open ended. Cadillac used this method to determine that what should be promoting safety features. Next is questionnaire construction. This is very much popular method in among the students. Designed to elicit the information that meets the study's requirement. The questions should be clear, easy to understand, and directed towards meeting an objective. So need to define objectives before designing the questionnaire. Must maintain impartiality and very careful and personal data. Basic types of questions are open-ended questions and close-ended questions. Open-ended questions means what you feel about dash dash. So your opinion can be put in words that can be small-ended question, small answer or long answer questions. So these are open-ended questions where the respondents can openly talk about their opinion. Whereas another type is close-ended questions where already options are given to the respondents like uh, do you like to buy our products, and if we are giving the options like yes and no, then we are limiting the response of the respondents to only two options, that is yes or no. So these are close-ended questions where we are already providing some options as answers to the respondents. The type of questionnaire are four, namely structured undiscussed questions, then structured disguised questions, unstructured undisguised questions, and unstructured disguised questionnaire. So we will see one by one. Unstructured, that is first. Structured undiscussed questionnaire are the one where the questions follow a sequence pattern, and this sequence pattern is not changed irrespective of the situation or person being questioned or the interview's limitations. Again, the questionnaire discloses the purpose of the questionnaire to the interviewer. Next is a structured disguised question. Here, these are the one where the questions follow a sequence pattern and this sequence pattern is not changed irrespective of the situation or person being questioned or to the interviewer's limitations. Here, the purpose of the questionnaire is not disclosed. Purpose of the questioning is not disclosed to the interview. Unstructured, undisguised questions are the ones where the questions do not follow a sequence and could be altered based on the situation. Here, the persons being interviewed or the interviewer's in limitations. Again, the questionnaire discloses the purposes of the questioning to the interview. Last is unstructured and undiscussed questionnaire. These are the ones where the questions do not follow a sequence and could be altered based on the situation. Person being interviewed or the interview's limitation. Here, the purpose of questionnaire is not disclosed with the interview. Now next is the scale of measurement. So in the questionnaire, you can use the nominal, ordinal, interval or ratio scale. So there are four types, namely nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio scales. So in industrial marketing, the scales or ordinal and interval are normally used only in case of demographic or personal data. Nominal scales are used. In physical science, ratio scales are used. So generally in our case or in industrial marketing research, we are typically using ordinal and interval scale. Only for obtaining the demographic profile, we are using nominal scale. Now you can also conduct observation methods. So record upward behavior, not physical conditions and events. So how long does the McDonald's customers have to wait in line can be combined with interviews or singularly can be used. So mechanical observation devices, i.e. cameras, then eye movements recorders, scanner technologies, Nissan's technologies for media and so on. So observation avoids the central problem of the survey methods, motivating the respondents to state their true feelings or opinions. If this is the only method, then there is no data indicating the causal relationships. So next part is finding and conclusions. So the finding must primarily report whether the hypothesis is correct or could be neglected. Then it must match the objectives, and since the data in such marketing studies are non-parametric non-parametric, one uses certain descriptive statistics followed by inferential statistics, and then the causal methods of regression. Assignments, like for many organizations, relationship marketing is more important than the individual transactions because these long-term relationships can yield greater overall profitability. Would it be easier to convince a company to enter into long-term supplier-customer relationship if you offered them savings through vertical integration of product offerings, or ease of use derived from a broad range of product offerings? Then causal marketing has become very important marketing tool. This is we have discussed. Now consumers, especially those under 30, will purchase brands that they believe are more likely to help to improve the world. One benefit is that it may help improve a company's image. So choose at least three products and show how they are using the cause marketing. Discuss their strategies, target markets, objectives, etc. Has the company been successful? The paper must include at least three current references and should be about 5 to 8 pages long. You can use the web or library to collect the information. Also, you can conduct the primary and secondary data collection methods. So, a few after the assignments, that is, we are just discussing the self-assessment questions. So, what do you understand by the business marketing? Then, what is the difference between the businesses and consumer marketing? Then, what are the impacts of internet on business marketing? Then, what is MIS, that is marketing information system, how it plays important role in industrial marketing. Then, for today's session, what is marketing research? Write down the importance in industrial marketing. So, these are self assessment questions. So, I wish you best wishes for your studies.